Good evening, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well tonight. Of course, I'm going to see if audio is good. I could hear it from my YouTube, but I think I muted my YouTube just so I wouldn't hear it through the headphones. But go ahead and just give the word if you can hear and see me okay. And we'll get right to it. We'll welcome the chat and we'll get right to this very, very fun topic. Now, again, well, not again. I'm just introducing this idea. Good. My prof says I look stunning and I sound loud and clear. Thank you, Prof. I appreciate that. So, and Big Al, as he's my loyal friend because I know this topic might make him uncomfortable. But I am not dissing the show. This is strictly music. We might talk about something else involving the show, but it's not the actual story itself. It's not the character writing of Boba Fett. It's not the setting of the story. I'm just wanting to talk about music and maybe one or two other things. So let's welcome the chat. Let's see how everyone is doing. And we will welcome Big Al first. I think it was Ace that was first. Who was first, I should say. But disappeared in the chat. I am sure you know my thoughts, LOL. So just as confirmation and consolation, it's about the music. Because actually that's the only thing I can be objective about. Is nothing to do with the writing because I haven't seen the show. And we all still love you very much, Big Al. And he's making sure we do. Professor Geek says, ready for your wisdom, beautiful. I can't even imagine how defenders of the show in general can defend this theme. Now, I've seen mixed reviews on the theme, on the music, how I've seen people just praising it to bits. I've seen people not sure about it and not really a fan of it. Some people say it's great. Some people say it's the new sound of Star Wars, as I have said on my stream that I've warned you guys about. People are accepting this new sound of Star Wars. But I think a lot of people, if you were to put it to a poll, I think people would say it sounds nice, but maybe it's not the right thing for Star Wars. So Jigwatt says he is unable to watch the stream tonight. We'll catch the replay. Have a good stream. Well, welcome to the replay. I hope you are enjoying yourself here. And I hope you have a good day. And Ace is off. Oh, he's here to say another thing to get the week off to a good start. Humans? Well, that's good. I'm glad my stream can bring about that. I would agree to that. There are some YouTube channels out there. I just am very happy to see a stream, whether live or recorded. It's just a nice thing to see. So thank you for thinking the same of my channel. Dr. Y says, time to fret on some Fett frets. Yeah. And so I linked these two links, these two pages here of the Book of Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett music theme. And here's the original version, released probably by Disney. I think that's from their main Disney music video streaming or YouTube channel. And then here's one by a gentleman by the name of Samuel Kim. He's a pretty big YouTuber. He's really, really good on production. He's really good with his library of instruments, and he knows how to transcribe different popular culture music. He's known to do medieval settings as well for different things. He actually did a Game of Thrones medieval setting, and it worked really, really well. And I'm not a fan of the Game of Thrones theme. I'm not a fan of the show. I've never watched the show. I'm not interested. I actually do think the Game of Thrones theme is really overrated, and I would tell you why, but I would also tell you why there is a reason why it's so attractive. There's a reason why it's so aurally attractive, but it's actually a very simple composition. Shh, I'll tell you the secrets later. But Samuel Kim, yeah, he's great as far as his overall quality and production. And so I asked, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the original as released by Disney, or do you prefer his version? The music composition is the same, but the instrumentation is different. And I corrected myself down here. So Dr. Y says, Samuel Kim, of course I'm saying this because I'm a big fan of Samuel Kim. I will say this of Samuel Kim. He has a really good sound to his arrangements, to his remixes, shall we say. But I would say transcriptions, maybe not transcriptions, just epic arrangements of these different popular music pieces, pop culture music pieces. The one thing I would say he has the tendency of doing too much is doing the same chord progressions. He works with very simple chord progressions that are epic feeling. So if you move from the minor 1 to the major 7, or the minor 1 to the major 3, or the minor 1 to the major 6, those kinds of progressions, if they're different, sometimes he'll place those differently, different from the original score, so it sounds different, but he'll use those same blasted chords again and again because they have such an epic resonant feel. There's like I should call them dopamine chords because that's what they are. And it's soundtracks with Birdman. Boba Fett had a theme, and the Empire Strikes Back. That I'd even consider looking at that. And maybe if I hear it, then I would recognize it. So thank you, Soundtracks with Birdman. Thank you for saying that. Miguel Espinoza is here. That's good to see you here. And thank you, guys. And I think that's everyone. Miguel says, we may disagree about the magnificent theme for this great show, but we can still be friends. I will always be friends with you, Al. In spite of our differences of opinions, I will always be friends with you, and I will never trash talk you. You are free to think for yourself. That's what I say. Oh, okay. 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 Is it the song Jolene by Dolly Parton? Is that by Dolly Parton? Or is it a character from like some fantasy setting? I'll have to see. Oh, thank you. Can you make a tutorial video of how you made the Uncharted song? I could probably go over it. Yeah, it's specific instrumentation. It's a really simple composition. We'll get to our topic at hand, but just as a sidebar here, track. Thank you for saying that. I did enjoy that. That piece is, I think, 6 or 7 tracks. It's really really simple in instrumentation. So I'm glad you liked it. I could probably put up a real quick, if you're making that suggestion, I can probably do a quick 3 to 5 minute video showing the instruments that I used and modified and stuff like that. I can reveal my instruments, my instrumental secrets. So yeah, I'll try to remember that. Maybe I'll watch the replay of this and see if I can remember your recommendation. Oh, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, sweet. All right. Now, I don't know the history of this, but I feel like Al is starting something that I don't want to be a part of. Just got this funny feeling that I've heard this bit of shenanigans before. All right. So let's talk about the music theme of the Book of Boba Fett, or the music theme for the Book of Boba Fett. Got to get those prepositions right. Now, I'm going to start right off the bat. My first impression of the theme and the overall impression of the theme. So my first impression when I first heard this, I'm like, no way. 2 thumbs down. And we'll talk about why, like why that's a huge thing. Why I give this an overall score of a D+. But on the music alone, if you were to show me this piece of music and I had no idea it had to do with anything Star Wars related, if you just gave me an audio track saying, hey, listen to this, and this is for a film or this is for a game, and I heard it, I'd actually give the composition on a whole probably a C+ or B-. There are things that lack that I think could really be improved upon. The music itself, I would give a B- or a C+, averaging. But because it is set in Star Wars, I give it a D plus, maybe even a D. Maybe I shouldn't even give it such a generous grade. I won't give it an F. And there was a reason why I bumped it up. I would say it's there. There's a lot of potential, but it is not Star Wars. So the overall score is, as a piece of music on its own, B minus, C plus. As a music piece for Star Wars, D plus, close to a failing grade. Now, why the low score? Why do I think this music theme for the show is below average? I would say, we'll get into the compositional points in a minute, but I will say it has everything to do with setting. It has everything to do with setting. It completely removes you from the feeling of Star Wars. If you were to give this audio track to me to listen to, giving me no other bit of information about where this came from, I would think of a couple of things. I would think maybe like a Pirates of the Caribbean inspired film. Like maybe there's another kind of like something to do with, maybe not pirates, because it doesn't really even have that sea shanty feel, but it has an older feel. It could be something of a primitive culture in an actual, earth-based place, a region of the world, maybe in some time in the past, or maybe some primitive culture we don't know about now. Sure, I can hear some primitive community, some community based on Earth, or maybe of the fantastical. Maybe it has to do with pirates. Maybe it has to do with tribes of some kind. Maybe it has to do with the primitive. Maybe I don't know anything about New Zealand culture or Australian, Aboriginal culture. Maybe something of the Aboriginal, or maybe something of like a community based on a mountain or something. So if you gave me no bit of information there, I would say, okay, this song's all right, or this piece, I should say. It does include vocals, sort of, but it's not a song; it's a piece. This music piece is all right. I would say, okay, maybe I'm thinking 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, Aboriginal, primitive, tribal, or some unknown region of the world we haven't seen before, that lived very basically. And then I would be satisfied if that was the theme. That is not the theme. Not only is that so different, from Star Wars, it involves a character we've known for 40 years. And that character is Boba Fett, a bounty hunter. And we know him through his relationship with Darth Vader. We know him through his relationship with Jabba the Hutt. We don't hear that kind of music when we see people like Vader and Jabba the Hutt. And therefore, this music has nothing to do with the Book of Boba Fett. Now, from the pictures I've seen from, people like Thor Skywalker and people talking about the Book of Boba Fett, I do understand in the story, in the series, he comes across the Tuscans. I don't picture the Tuscans like that. Maybe that's me being short-sighted, but if you wanted to put that argument in there, it's like, well, no. He needs that chanting there. He needs that kind of primitive music because we're talking about the Tuscans. I would still say it's Star Wars, it's Tatooine, and we have loads of music giving us that setting of Tatooine, whether it's with the Tusken Raiders, and I'm sorry if that's offensive now to say Tusken Raiders, or the Tusken tribe, if that's less offensive. We have music for them. We have music for Anakin's childhood and his work as a servant. We have his revisiting a property to see if he can find his mom. We have it with Luke. We have it with Luke's uncle and aunt, and we just have the sense of Tatooine altogether that feels ultimately like Star Wars. So actually, the score itself is below average, really because of the setting alone. We're going to talk about music composition points in a second here. And I would say these points are important. These are things that the composer really needs to consider to improve himself in his craft, especially for film or television. But even if you had these problems, I think it would be the setting itself. If you had something that felt like Star Wars with these compositional points that I'm about to show you, then okay, I would be a little bit more forgiving. I'd probably give it actually kind of like the grade that I give it originally. If it had nothing to do with Star Wars, I would give it a B- or a C+. But because of the setting and because it has to do with a legacy character like Boba Fett, it's a D+, probably a D. I see that Zootopia and Final Fantasy Fan 12 is in the house, and we will get to the chat soon. I don't have a lot of notes to go through, but I do want to go through, recap a few points from that previous stream where I was talking about Ludwig Goransson, because it's the same composer who composed The Mandalorian, so it's the same guy. So we'll recap on things that I've heard from the Mandalorian score that I do want to bring about for talking about this theme. So let's recap on some problems I had heard of his score for The Mandalorian. So the problems involving Ludwig Goransson and his compositional style. Going back to my musical impressions, with his music for The Mandalorian, it was lack of orchestration, and we'll get to that with the Book of Boba Fett theme, lack of counterpoint, lack of melody and good, strong harmonic progression, lack of resolution. His overall ambient atmosphere is interesting. It's even engaging, but it causes the narrative, the musical narrative, to be indistinguishable from any other science fiction work or genre. So he actually is causing Star Wars to be indistinguishable from other science fiction pieces or art forms or film or story. There's also a minimal use of the orchestra with the Mandalorian theme. Not so much with this Book of Boba Fett theme, but we will definitely get to that because the orchestra is really, really important to talk about. An overall lack of intricacy that we had heard with John Williams, Michael Giacchino, Kevin Kiner, and Jeremy Soule from the Knights of the Old Republic, the famous game composer for KOTOR. So that's a recap of The Mandalorian. Now, here are the underlying problems of the Book of Boba Fett. The musical theme, I should say. So here are the underlying problems of the music theme for the Book of Boba Fett. We're going to start with our bullet points, and then we're going to get into a more, I would say, imperative problem overall, and that has to do with the orchestra. So we're going to start with the music composition itself, and we're going to start with the introduction of the Book of Boba Fett theme. So I do have the link for you guys to refer to, but the introduction is quite simple and quite repetitive in places where it doesn't need to be repetitive. Goransson has this, I would say 2-3 bar, a phrase that involves 2, 3, 4 bars, or 3, 4 as far as the meter. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's 3 plus 3 plus 5. And that's his first phrase. And it's very interesting that he's using that asymmetry. I do like that he uses that, metric asymmetry. But he has that as his first phrase. And then he repeats it with a little bit of a tail ending the second phrase. And then he repeats those 2 phrases. So you've got kind of a very long introduction that doesn't have a lot of activity. It's very simple in tone. It's very simple in nature. Now, overall, that's not a problem, especially if you're trying to get the person into this very specific mood, this very specific setting, that's fine. But when he actually gets into the melody, it's a shorter phrase than the redundant, simple phrasing of the introduction. So he actually, as a composer, should have swapped it. He should have had a shorter introduction leading into a longer melody with an additional phrasing. When he first introduces his melody, it's a pretty captivating melody. It's a complete melody. I'll give it that. Maybe that's why I didn't give his theme an F, because that actually is a complete melody, and I want to be fair there. But start out with a shorter introduction, and then have a longer melody. He actually, when he introduces that melody, it's a complete phrase, but then he goes back into the intro music with a little bit more variance. And then he returns to the main melody and then does a very abrupt transition. So he actually spent too long in the intro itself. There's nothing wrong with a long intro, but it needs to be more musically active, and it really shouldn't be longer than the first entrance of the melody. So I would dock him a point there for just a very simple, long, redundant intro to a melody that's actually shorter than the intro. Now, he does elongate that melody. He lengthens that melody after revisiting the introduction material. So it's okay, but it is, I would say, especially with film, because I'm understanding this with game music, it's not a bad idea to repeat your complete melody. Even if you feel like it's too long or redundant, it's better for the composer to repeat their melody than repeat something like an intro or an interlude. All right. Next is the male chanting of this piece. The male chanting. Okay, so I have no problem with male chanting. I think, especially when it sounds tribal and it sounds like, like a male chorus, maybe Polynesian or whatever, or, something outside New Zealand. Okay, yeah, it can sound really powerful. You know who really implemented that really well? Howard Shore with his Polynesian choir. I think he used a Polynesian choir for the Mines of Moria when the fellowship go, they all go into vast, the vast halls of Moria, and you hear the choir. I think that was all male Polynesian. I think maybe he used the Polynesian choir for another scene, but I think it was the Mines of Moria that he implemented that, and it was really powerful. But it was more than just having a Polynesian choir and having that really different color and range of the chorus. They were good singers. They were good vocalists. So this contradicts what I had heard with the Book of Boba Fett theme, where he uses a male chorus. But I want to be careful when I say that, because it sounds absolutely amateur. In fact, if I'm going to guess correctly, I'm going to guess two things. And I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it. And actually, if you guys have better knowledge of this, please leave it in the chat. I'm going to guess two things. The first thing is I'm going to guess that Ludwig Goransson used a library of sampled male instruments. So maybe a vocalist who had recorded his voice and sent it to a library of vocals that you could purchase for $50 or $100. So Goransson having license to that specific male voice sampled in his library of instruments. That's the first guess. But the problem with that first guess is the male singer, whoever he is, he sounds really strained. Like he sounds really like he's constricting his throat when he's singing. He's using his chest voice, singing quite high, and he sounds really, really strained, like he did not warm up his vocal cords. Which has me wonder, well, is that a professional sampling of a voice? Just at a, pitched differently at a different rate, at a faster rate? Maybe that's why it sounds strained. My second guess because of that, my second guess is maybe Goransson recorded himself singing, and then he sampled his own singing up and down a chorus of instruments. Now, there's this part of the composition that actually really would work if the instrumentation was right, and Samuel Kim has this correct, where he has this okay, I'll be the female of this because I can't sing as a male. But it has there's a very nice part of the music piece in the composition where it's like and Samuel Kim, by the way, I haven't warmed up my vocal cords, but that's okay. I'm not producing this for Disney. Samuel Kim actually has the females and the males singing together in a very comfortable range where it's, it's very comfortable for me to sing in my head voice, not my chest voice. I'm not belting it. I'm just singing da 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 da, and mixing the group. Now, he didn't have to use female. He could have just used male. But the problem with using male is this is my voice for this pitch as a female. And then I'm gonna belt y'all. I'm not warmed up. Da. Okay, that's actually not that high for me. I can go higher for my chest voice. Da. But that is very high for a typical male, a typical man, adult male, to use his chest voice and sing at that very pitch in that very register. Very easy for me to do as a female, but it's pretty hard for the typical adult male to sing that. So what ends up happening if you guys listen to that part, it's supposed to be kind of a moving part, but the male, whoever he is, whether it's the composer himself or a library sample instrument, or maybe he got his friend next door to do it, it sounds like this: la 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 la. And it really sounds that amateur. I know that sounds obnoxious, and I'm not trying to make it sound obnoxious. Maybe my face looks funny because it's kind of funny to demonstrate. But it sounds like that man is straining, and he's saying something like la 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 la. And if you want to make it sound tribal, make it sound tribal. But the thing is, if you're talking about a tribe, fantasy or real life, chances are they've been to war. So therefore, they would know how to cry, do a high belting war cry or war chanting. Meaning, these tribes would be very skilled with singing. They shouldn't sound amateur. No matter what region of the world you're from, if you are part of a tribe, you will function in a way of war and ceremony and procession. And you will be skilled in your singing. Just, it doesn't matter what region of the world you're from. And this male chanting just struck me as crazy amateur, and worse than that. It sounds like it's one voice and layered. Maybe not layered as like a track, but I feel like there's like a voice on top of a voice on top of a voice that's the same voice, and maybe there's like there's one main volume for the front voice, and then there's other voices that are like maybe brought down 3 decibels, brought down 9 decibels, brought down 15 decibels, maybe added some reverb, but it sounds like the same voice. It sounds like the same voice when it goes low too, like the pitch is low, and that low pitch doesn't sound, it just doesn't sound real from what I could hear. Just and when you hear the male singing really, really low, it doesn't sound relaxed. And a man can sing very, very low, relaxed. Like I could sing very low. I haven't warmed up though, but I can sing very low, very relaxed. And very present, very powerful. So points docked for the male chanting. It sounds incredibly amateur. And what a poor excuse to say, well, it's about primitives and it's about tribes and stuff like that. It's like tribes would know how to sing. Remember, for war and procession and ceremony, tribes would know how to sing. So points docked for that. I see Horizon Talker in the house. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. All right. Next is overall instrumentation. We're going to get into the idea of the orchestra. This is very imperative that I'm going to talk about tonight. Uh, Instrumentation, and I won't really stretch it too far. I would just say there's a lot lacking in the instrumentation, and Goransson just used a really strange way of putting in instrumentation. So we talked about the male chanting. There's this one little moment, and it's a little moment. It doesn't appear more than once in the span of 3 minutes and 22 seconds or whatever it is. But there's this one weird moment where he puts in this Spanish style playing or Hispanic, whether Portugal, Spain, or Central America, or Mexico, he uses this very specific style of trilling for the trumpet that sounds very much Spain. It sounds Spanish. I wouldn't say Mexican. I would say more Spanish. Um, and I don't know what would cause him to want to include trumpet like that. In fact, I'll venture to say, kind of like with Samuel Kim, who used brass instead of the male chanting. The main melody was brass, and that was a really good call on his part. It really worked very, very well. And then I think he kinda softened the trumpet because it sticks out like a sore thumb when you hear it. It's like, "What is this Spaniard trumpeter doing here?" And, like, are you supposed to feel Spanish culture when you're on Tatooine? I mean, are you? Like, is there a structure of Jabba's palace or, some compounds that make you think of Spain? Maybe? I don't know. I haven't seen the show, so what do I know? But it sounds very specifically Spanish. And if I'm doing something for Norway, the culture of Norway, I'm not going to include a flamenco style guitar playing. I'm not going to include that kind of style. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. I mean, it's kind of like saying, well, we've got a guy from Spain who's in our film. So why don't you use some flamenco guitar just for a little moment? It's not going to be like the main melody or whatever. And I think that's a really weird, odd choice. And I remember, thinking about the Mandalorian score, like there are a couple chords where it sounds really French. I'm like, why does it sound French? And then why does it sound Germanic as he's trying to shift over to sound more like John Williams? It's just really strange. Choice of color in the instrumentation. He really should have just nixed that trumpet altogether. Shouldn't have even been there. So that's what I mean by instrumentation. Like, why would you select that? It's so bizarre that you would select that. It should just have been completely cut out of the scene, cut out of the musical narrative. Now, trumpet on its own would have been fine. In fact, trumpet maybe as the melody or maybe a brass section as the melody would have worked just fine, as it sounds pretty good with Samuel Kim's arrangement. Next thing that I'm assessing as far as the below average score is the underdeveloped transitions. So I would say compositionally as a whole, it's slightly above average. It's a decent piece of music. It can work. It has potential. But Goransson really is choppy with his transitions. I won't go into the whole analysis of it. It'd probably be fun to do. But he has blocked sections that do work as sections, albeit he should lengthen the phrasing of his melody, shorten the intro, shorten the interlude before repeating the melody again. I would just be a little bit more symmetrical in the phrasing, the melodic phrasing of the musical structure. So, his A section, his intro, his A section, his B section, maybe that C section getting into the recapitulation of the melody, all of that works. But the transitions between those sections are quite abrupt. They don't give the impact they should give. By that I mean there's especially with that one thing I was singing that you can hear of, from Samuel Kim's video, that beautiful, potentially beautiful chorus could really work, but the setup to that chorus kind of fell flat. So I would say he does lack in transitions. They are fairly underdeveloped, and it's a hard thing for a composer to compose transitions. I struggle with transitions quite frequently, so I understand. It's like, no, I've got this great A section, I've got this fantastic B section, then the A section, then the C section. Well, you know what I mean by that. There is an ABA, AC form, but all that to say is you got to work with the digression too, even if it's very small in length, or short in length, I should say. So points docked for underdeveloped transitions. And lastly, we're going to talk about orchestration. We talked about orchestration on the previous talk with his Mandalorian score. And again, just to make the clarification, instrumentation is your selection of instruments that you choose for your orchestral ensemble. It could be the full orchestra, it could be a major ensemble that has, like a 20-piece ensemble. It could be a trio, it could be a string quartet. So the instrumentation is your selection of instruments, but the way you orchestrate those instruments, the way you complement these different instruments, or you make the instruments complement one another, the way you work with the musical structure, the narrative. Where is this voice going? How is it relating to this voice? How is the counterpoint between these two voices working? That's orchestration. It's its own craft. It's its own specialty. I'm a composer, but a person could not pay me $100,000 a year to orchestrate every day because I simply don't have that skill. Oh, sorry about that. There was a tickle in my throat. I was like, I'm going to ignore this. I'm going to ignore this. And then all of a sudden, it just assailed me. So I think that's fine now. I'm good. So what were we talking about? We were talking about orchestration. So, excuse me. Orchestration is a specialty on its own. It's very hard to do. So I could say with all confidence, I'm a composer, I know what to do. But to orchestrate is a tall order for many, many composers. And some composers are masterful orchestrators. And I would say I'm getting better at that with things like electronic instruments. So orchestrating electronic music, I'm getting better and better in understanding what works and what doesn't over the years. But if someone were to say, "Hey, oh, you're a composer, we'll pay you 100 grand this year to do orchestration every day. We have this piano piece, but we want you to orchestrate." Or maybe they'd give me like 8 piano pieces. "Hey, orchestrate this." I'm like, even for 100 grand, I just can't. I can't do it. I just don't have that level of mastery. Excuse me. But that's really important for people like Goransson who work in electronics and the orchestra for them to know. So here's where I'm finding all this to be quite interesting. Something I hadn't considered until really this week. I think I intuitively knew the underlying problems of Goransson's orchestration, but I would say now it's come to be quite clear for me. And I just want to say, excuse me, I just want to say that Goransson, and I would say a lot like him, and I would fall prey to this as well. Goransson, because he doesn't have the knowledge of an orchestrator, he doesn't have knowledge of the full orchestra. He's not classically trained. I'm not saying that as a dig, but because of that, he doesn't actually know how to use the instruments of the orchestra when he's working for a project like Mandalorian that want to use the orchestra in some parts. He actually doesn't know how to use orchestral instruments to their utmost potential, like John Williams, and even people like Michael Giacchino. They know how to work with these instruments. And I want to be even more specific than that. When you don't know how to orchestrate, when you, as a film composer or just composer in general, just don't know all the ins and outs of what goes into an orchestra and how instruments work together, you actually miss a pretty imperative thing. You could see it as an opportunity, but you could see it as a very important thing in music in general. And that is, you don't know how to utilize virtuosity between the different instruments. So what do I mean by this? Well, I'm going to use a couple examples. The first example is, you'll notice that symphony orchestras all over the world, in Europe, in South America, in North America, in Japan, all over East Asia, you'll know, and you've seen, I know it's probably common knowledge now, that many highly trained musicians and professionals in the music orchestra setting, in the symphony orchestra setting, I should say, many of these orchestras are playing movie soundtracks, television soundtracks, and game soundtracks. You'll see something like a Harry Potter concert. You'll see Star Wars. You'll see Final Fantasy. You'll see there have been orchestrations or orchestral arrangements of the Final Fantasy games. You'll see things, probably, if it hasn't happened already, you're going to see Sonic the Hedgehog. So symphonies all over the world are playing film music, game music, and now with things like Game of Thrones, television music. Now, why that's been the case, and this actually has been a decades-long problem, probably since the 80s, if not even before. Because of economics and problems with the middle class, in the 1960s and the 1970s, the orchestra was getting, they were experiencing a shortage of patronage over the years, especially when things like acoustics and massive concert halls were blowing up, and architecture and beautiful architecture. You go to a concert hall in a major city and you get fine acoustics, you get fine seating, you just get a beautiful hall to as a jewel of the city. Well, as beautiful as it is, and as important as it is to have a wonderfully rich piece of architecture like that, it's costly. Hiring musicians is costly. Paying a yearly salary to a conductor is costly. The admin for programming, for marketing, for recruiting, for getting artists in residence, it's all very costly. And as the decades progressed, I'm just going to stick to the United States, but I can't imagine it's exclusive to just here. As this progressed and as things were just getting more and more costly, symphony orchestras were actually experiencing a shortage of patronage to pay for all these expenses. And you'll find, if you've ever been to a symphony orchestra, this was the case with me 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even when I was a kid. and I'm sure it's the case now. I've been to a couple symphonies over the years that you'll see a lot of very old people in the concert hall. And demographically speaking, it is mainly European. It's white European, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just patrons of the symphony orchestra have been predominantly, not all, but have been predominantly white. But not so much the white European demographic. That's not what's important. It's actually the age of the patrons. Well, they're passing away. Gently speaking, they're dying off. So the patronage of the symphony orchestra had been on the decline as things were getting more and more expensive. So what did the orchestra decide to do? Well, they weren't getting that sustaining income. They weren't getting the funds with things like Stravinsky and Mozart and Beethoven and Brahms. Sadly, they were not getting the funds to keep people interested. The more the patrons were dying off, the less interest, there was a decline in actual interest among the younger groups and the demographics. So what did the orchestra have to do? Well, you could go between maybe state funding and campaigns for donations and stuff like that. But what they did to keep the concert tickets to keep them from dropping, they started doing popular culture. They started doing, well, let's actually backtrack. They actually started doing outdoors events, where people didn't have to pay so much because it was outdoors and they could be in their casual clothes and stuff like that. So it wasn't as a black collar, black tie, white collar, black tie event. It wasn't as sophisticated, so it didn't cost as much. So people were getting interested in saying, oh, let's go to the orchestra. And so there would be outdoor concerts. So it wasn't as expensive because you didn't have to go to a concert hall. You didn't have to maintain a really expensive concert hall. And then when that was kind of, stifling, or maybe it was making progress, well, they decided then after that, well, we can't sustain our funds with just the old classics. We can't sustain with Wagner and all that, or Mahler. We actually do have to go to contemporary music. And contemporary music was arrangements of things like big band and rock music, but it also was popular culture, popular entertainment. So they started doing things like playing John Williams' score for Star Wars and for Indiana Jones. And maybe this was a problem in the 60s too. I really don't know when this started happening. But, Gone with the Wind, they would play the classic Max Weber scores. They would get into the film world as a symphony orchestra to keep the funds up. Now, I say all of this because we have people like John Williams who knew how to work with the orchestra and how to compose for the orchestra because he went back to the greats before him: Wagner, Stravinsky, Gershwin, Copland. He went back to those great composers of the past, of the long distant past, from the 1800s to, the 1950s. He knew how to compose in that very specific style that demanded the musician their all, that demanded the professional musician their all. The virtuosity of the musician, the dexterity, the technique, the prowess of the musician. These composers, Wagner, Mahler, Stravinsky, Shostakovich, Gershwin, even people like Duke Ellington and figures of the big band and the figures of jazz, they knew how to get the musicians up to speed with musical prowess. Not up to speed, but you know what I mean. And John Williams also, he knew how to write very difficult passages for all the instruments. But that has steadily been on the decline, where composers, less and less, as the years are going by, guys, as the decades are going by, composers do not have the aptitude and the classical training and the ability of people like Weber and John Williams. So the composers of the past, like with film noir and all those great American composers there, and people who are still living, like John Williams. So the decline has been the reduction of not only musical structure, but the reduction of technical and musical prowess of every individual of the orchestra. What does that mean? Do the professional musicians cease to become good professional musicians? No, because they go back, on their own time, on their spare time, they go back to the old stuff that keep them up to speed and up to date with their technical prowess and their musical prowess. But they also are performing very overly simple. I would say not overly simple, but I would say easy, elementary skill, intermediate level, elementary level pieces of music, like what Goransson is providing us. So it's been about 14 or 15 years since I've been in the orchestra and have been an active participant in the orchestra. But when we had a concert, oh yeah, we rehearsed. Oh yeah, we practiced. I would go through those really hard excerpts. I was like, okay, count and really practice those hard things. Brahms is a beast when it comes to the string, the upper strings. And I had to practice a lot to blend in with all these other people. So before the night of the show, it would be hours of rehearsing and practicing to just play for that one night, just for 2.5 hours or 3 hours. But for someone like Goransson, I can pick up my violin right now and play by ear. Da 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 open G string. I don't have to practice that. And professionals all over the world, philharmonics from Chicago to Denmark, they are playing these crazy simple, crazy easy, crazy elementary level pieces of music. They do it well and they make it sound good because they're professionals. But I want to just home in on this really important point. Composers now, living composers who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, are ceasing to pursue the ability to compose, the ability to master composition in a way that would help the performer, the professional, demonstrate excellence and musical prowess. So the music on the whole might sound good, but it's also really easy. And this brings me into my second point, and that has to do with ASCAP. So I'm actually going to go ahead and write it in. I see you, Ace. Good night, Ace. All right, ASCAP. Let me write that in and talk about that. So we're talking about professionals, high-level, highly paid professionals playing elementary level music and making it sound really good and making it sound really emotional and it hits all the right chords, but also just quite easy. This brings me to the point of ASCAP. And I'm going to go ahead and read the definition online. ASCAP is the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. And it is an American not-for-profit performance rights organization that protects its members' musical copyrights by monitoring public performances of their music, whether via a broadcast or a live performance, and compensating them accordingly. So that's all just saying ASCAP, and also another one for music is called BMI. And I can't remember what it's for, but it's not body mass index. It's a different BMI. But that's also working. I think it's a competitor. I think it is a competitor of ASCAP. So we'll just use ASCAP as an example. ASCAP for composers, you really want to be an ASCAP member if your music is performed, if your music is popular and it's performed at venues, whether large or small. I think actually, I'm just going to do a little bit of a sidebar. But I think there was a bit of a controversy with Neil Young with President Trump a while back, where he wanted to sue the president for campaigning with one of his songs. And he lost the lawsuit. And I think, I'm no lawyer, but I think it's because it was taking place, Trump's campaign was taking place where where's a very large venue, I think it was a stadium of some kind, where that was pretty much protected. It was a large venue that said, hey, people can play this music here, because when you're a member of ASCAP and you agree to certain licensing to places, you pretty much have no say in where your music is played. Now, to me, I think that's great. Like, hey, exposure, that's fine. And it's not endorsing anything. So like if I got really popular and some, Satanist, started doing this ceremony and I'm Christian, totally antithetical, right? And they played my music. Well, I actually couldn't sue them if it was in a certain public setting, and my music, if I was an ASCAP composer, that licensing, it protects them. The licensing of that public place protects them from getting sued by me. So I have no say. Neil Young, I think that was the musician, had no say when it came to the Trump campaign. So it's actually pretty viable to be a member of ASCAP if you're popular and if you are expecting your music to be performed in different locations. So John Williams, for instance, he would be a perfect candidate to join that kind of membership, because his music, chances are his music is played all the time in concert halls and auditoriums, in stadiums, maybe in some way. Yeah, I'm sure stadiums like it. I'm sure Imperial March has been in a stadium or two, or appeared in a stadium or two. So why I bring up ASCAP is also quite useful for composers who write for school ensemble music. So from elementary to high school ensembles, high school bands, high school orchestras, the string ensemble, middle school band, whether it's concert band or wind ensemble. If you're a composer constantly being commissioned to write for a high school orchestra, no matter what level, you should be an ASCAP composer. You should have that next to your name or next to the copyright information, because it's like, hey, I'm protected. I get royalties, I get fees, but you're also protected. I can't sue you for playing my music in an auditorium. So it's a complete, license protection agreement between composer and group. Now, I say all of this. This is important. I'm getting to my point. I'm saying all of this because I've had experience playing this kind of music with these kind of composers. These ASCAP composers for high school orchestra, high school band, high school wind ensemble. And I want to say this just outright. A lot of these composers, they know how to compose music, complete musical structure. They know how to compose good music for a high schooler to play. But it really doesn't go beyond that, meaning people of an intermediate level, like a 6th grader, could play their music, or a 9th grader, maybe a little more advanced, can play their music, which means it's very easy to do. So, if you were to give me a piece to play by them, say, oh, we need you to play this part. Sure, I'll look at it. It's like, I could learn this overnight, no problem. To the professional, it's very, very easy to do. And I think Goransson and the composers, these younger composers that are kind of following suit, are becoming more and more like these ASCAP composers, where it's like, you really should be composing for the high school orchestra. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I am saying that there is a difference in quality between ASCAP composer and someone like John Williams. I mean, I'm sure he is a member of some kind, but his level of writing is very different from the level of writing of your average, everyday, average Joe ASCAP composer. So if you were to put it on a scale, and John Williams is a 10, your average ASCAP composer is probably, in terms of level of difficulty for musicianship, I would say 5. Between 5 and 7. That's kind of generous. I'm going to say even 4 and 7. So I definitely wanted to bring that to the table. There's nothing wrong with being an ASCAP composer composing for high school music. If I was given that kind of job, I probably would have I'd have more fun composing electronic music, but I wouldn't mind being given a grant or some sort of commission to write for a high school string ensemble. I think that would be great. I'd have a lot of fun doing that. But my level of composition would not be anywhere near John Williams. And I admit that. That would be a fact. So the virtuosity, the technical and musical prowess is on the decline as well. You're going to see top tier Philharmonic musicians play very easy stuff, including The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. And that's why I give the music theme for the Book of Boba Fett a D+. All right, we've got some new people. So let's see. All right, let's start. We'll get back into. Thank you guys. That was quite long. We'll get back into the chat. I think I'm going to close out some browsers here, or tabs, I should say. I even closed out my YouTube. So anyway, I'm back to chat. Thanks, guys. All right. Soundtracks with Birdman says Joel McNeely did a good job on the Shadows of the Empire soundtrack. Oh, cool. Are you talking about a game or music for an audiobook? I think that's a game, right? I'll have to check. Oh, I think that is a game. Yeah, because I was mentioning Jeremy Soule or Jeremy Soule. I wish I knew how to pronounce their names. Professor Geek says, but all that he's gone through, I mean, that's going to change him. He doesn't have to be the person we thought he was. Oh, sorry, that's Rian Johnson's defense for what he did to Luke. Exactly. If we have time, actually, I want to talk about the meta of what's going on with the Book of Boba Fett, but only if we have time. Okay. I've been hearing all over the internet for favoring this argument and for opposing this argument, but people say, we knew who Boba Fett was with just like a few lines of dialogue, and then some people would say, you can't know who he is, with a few lines of dialogue. If it's a really good scene, though, if it conveys who this guy is, you don't need quantity. You don't need many lines or many scenes or many episodes to decide who this character is or the quality of character in their writing. With Boba Fett, I don't know anything about the show. I just know what people are talking about the show, like the listeners, the people who watch Thor Skywalker and all that. Some absolutely love the direction of Boba Fett and where he's going. But also there are others who really believe that Boba Fett is enigmatic and mysterious. And I think that should have been the case, especially since we had the Mandalorian. It's like the Mandalorian was a bounty hunter. He is a bounty hunter. And you don't need two of the same kind of character. And it's like, no, they're like a team, a team of two Mandalorians that have the same profession. It's like, yeah, I guess, but that wasn't established with Boba Fett first. Maybe if Boba Fett had a partner, whether in the Clone Wars cartoon or even in the original trilogy, he was a lone wolf. And besides Grogu or Baby Yoda, besides him with Mando, I haven't seen the show Mando, but Mando was also a lone wolf. So you can't have two of the same character, if that makes sense. Final Fantasy fan says, for a show about Boba Fett, an awesome bounty hunter who's now being altruistic all of a sudden, this is stupid. It can't be a sudden change. And I know people say, well, he just came out of a Sarlacc pit and he's recovering and stuff like that. I get it. But if you have a sudden change of heart like that, it has to be convincing. And even going through a traumatic thing like not being digested in a Sarlacc pit, I mean, like, but then again, like, why would he be altruistic when he wants to take over Jabba's palace? It's like, and the Hulk, like, I know this is the case with the respect versus fear. You can command fear and respect with a person like Boba Fett. Like, you shouldn't not be afraid of him. Like, you could still be afraid of him. Like, if he came into my room, I would be terrified. But maybe if he came into my room as Favreau's writing him, I probably wouldn't be as terrified. But if he's with his peers or whatever, if he has friends of the same sort, birds of a feather, they could still respect him and be pretty afraid of him too. This whole mutually exclusive fear and respect thing, like it's a dichotomy. It's not a dichotomy. Anyway, but again, I don't know too much about the show. I just read a lot of comments. I find it fascinating. When you look at what Boba Fett did in the old EU, Disney's Fett doesn't make sense. Well, I think the prof was talking about how the Mandalorian was pretty much the replacement of Boba Fett. Like, I think they couldn't do Boba Fett, so they decided to do their original character, which is fine. That's fine. But then do Boba Fett? That doesn't make sense. You already have your own original Boba Fett-inspired character. The Legends Boba became leader of the Mandalorian Protector. How do you pronounce that? Protectorate, and had children. He had a legacy. Wow, he had children. Wow. Final Fantasy fan says, indeed, it doesn't really fit him at all. Now Boba Fett is now Darth Vader all of a sudden, troubled past and trying to seek redemption. Oh yeah, from Darth Vader to Anakin. That's why I think he should be an enigma. Like, how interesting for Star Wars fans to have Boba Fett just be a cameo for every show or even every couple of seasons of a show. He needs to be that kind of mysterious, like he should be scary, And one of the complaints I've been hearing about the show is that he always takes his helmet off, and that's what made him kind of intimidating to begin with, is he left his helmet on. Again, I'm only commenting and speculating based on what other people are saying, because I haven't seen the writing myself. Excuse me again. Okay, so it has a Western vibe. I don't know. Like I think yeah. So you're talking about the setting, the visual setting of Tatooine, and then Dr. Y is talking about Ennio Morricone's score. Yeah, okay, so you're beautiful. Thank you for summing it up right there. They're trying to sound like a spaghetti western or spaghetti westerns, but they're failing completely. It does sound off. And here's why. That's, as I said before, that's a specifically Spanish style of playing. Do you have Spain in Star Wars? No. Now this kind of thing would work in a science fiction setting if it involved Earth somehow, or even if there was a history of Earth and they an archivist, dug up something regarding Spain and different Spanish cultures. Then adding a trumpet of that style would make sense. But It's Star Wars, man. Final Fantasy says, in terms of Star Wars, the Imperial March sounds powerful and intimidating because Darth Vader, as well as the Galactic Empire as a whole, that is they are as well, or the Empire as well, is intimidating and powerful. This kind of music for Boba Fett feels like they're trying to fit a circle peg in a square hole. Yeah, so I do, again, as I said before, there's nothing wrong with the music piece itself. It just fits more in that either Aboriginal or primitive or 1700s pirate voyage. And that's what it sounds like. So it'd been fine for that. Whether it's instrument singing, acting, writing, all that takes practice. That means discipline and trial and error. Pro tip, know your disciplines. Challenge yourself. Yes. Welcome, Horizon Talker. Good to see you comment. John Williams is definitely a 10. One of the all-time great composers. Played a lot of his music when I was in high school and college. He really understood the orchestra and how to maximize it. Couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely. I mean, if you even just take, and I'm sure you have in your history or in your experience that you've seen a score and it's like, I mean, even a piano reduction of his music is pretty beefy, So just to give you a bit of context, I probably have beaten you over the head with this idea already. But if you were to give me a John Williams score to practice to be in an orchestra for a concert, I would probably need I would need a good month of solid practice, including rehearsals. For someone like Goransson, I probably would just, maybe he does a few things on the strings that are high, but I probably could fake it pretty well. I don't think I could fake John Williams. Yeah, I think I would just need like 1 or 2 nights. It's Sir Stone, man. Well, welcome, because we finished the chat, we finished the lecture, but we're still chatting away. His music was always fun to play, fun to hear, complex enough to challenge, never more complex than it needed to be. And I like that you say that because even with his complex passages, I never heard things that were unnecessary. I would say, with some of the scoring he had with the prequels, like there's the battle with Obi-Wan and Jango Fett. And I would say there's one part of the fight where I feel like it's a little too much, but it's supposed to emphasize the chaotic idea of fighting in, downpouring rain. So, I mean, I'm not going to dock points there. Kind of phlegmy. Yeah, exactly. Why have Boba Fett take his helmet off time and again to be less imposing? It's the treatment of Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I don't know who the character is, but I don't know anything about how they're treating Mandalorian lore, but I think that the helmet should be a sign of imposition, like I'm here to not be confrontational, but you stay out of my way, and it's kind of like, this is kind of a silly example that just came into my head, but it's a rather vocal, he's very vocal and in your face, but a character who's slightly enigmatic and mysterious himself is Orko from Masters of the Universe. And why I say that is he's totally fun-loving and he loves to do the right thing and help his friends. But what makes him a mystery is he's got a couple things. He's got like a dimension under his hat. He pulls out different things from under his hat, so that makes him mysterious, but also he doesn't show his face. In fact, I think I read Trollan culture, they only show their face to their most intimate relative, like a spouse, maybe a parent or something like that. But I think they only show their face to the people, the person that they marry, and I think that's cool. And I think that should be the same treatment with Boba. Now, people have said, and in fact, I think it was Goransson himself. It's very hard to portray a protagonist who is faceless. Essentially, he doesn't emote besides his tone and a little bit of his body gesture. Now, I think it could work. I don't think it should work as a trope. It shouldn't be a cliche. Maybe one or two characters being faceless like that, but by and large, have your protagonists with faces to emote. I know some people who are anime fans would disagree with me there, but I still don't like the fear versus respect thing. It's like you can respect and fear. It's kind of like excuse me. I'm sorry for my throat kind of going off, but it's kind of like he's not my favorite villain. I know everyone really likes him, but I understand why people like him, and that's Grand Admiral Thrawn. He's respected, but he's also feared. And it's kind of funny because I think Palian has the respect, but no one really fears him. And I don't think he needs that. But I think with Thrawn has fear and respect. This making it mutually exclusive actually is what's probably causing the steam or the momentum to kind of drift, or the character to lose steam. So oh, is that the lore? Is that Mandalorian? Never take off the mask. Oh. Oh. Well, Dr. Y has some pointers on the Lone Ranger. We'll probably wrap it up around 11, but we might go a little over depending on sorry about that cable. I kicked the cable. But there actually is one more thing I did want to talk about. And that is the meta that is going on with the Book of Boba Fett. So articles are saying it, like Forbes, The Atlantic, many YouTube commentators who love Star Wars, who are watching the Book of Boba Fett and giving their insight, people who listen to them giving their insight and their comments. And by and large, the reaction to this show is quite mixed. It's very mixed. And I think that was brought to a head with this last episode, episode 5. I'm not going to talk about episode 5 because I haven't watched the show, but I do want to provide a little bit of speculation what's going on with people watching it, with the fans, with the Star Wars fans. I've heard big channels, and there's these group of guys these 3 guys, I don't know what they look like. I don't know their names. They just have like 88 subscribers. But they have this podcast, and maybe maybe the podcast will grow substantially over time. And they're Star Wars fans, and they're supporting the things Disney is doing to a degree. I don't think they like the sequel trilogy. They love The Mandalorian, and they're watching the Book of Boba Fett. And they, as well as other people that I've seen, really love episode 5. And Thor Skywalker, with his thumbnail, said this show was perfection. I was like, okay, well, that sounds like the Book of Boba Fett is finally, picking up as far as climax and action and stuff like that. So people are finally happy, because I think the general thing is people have been more or less, I would say, dissatisfied with the first 4 episodes, just from what I'm reading. And people have been absolutely besides themselves with episode 5. And so everyone's saying how great episode 5 is. Like, okay, let me see what people are saying about the writing what's causing this to be universally accepted as a really, really good show. And when I saw that Boba Fett wasn't even in the show, I was like, no way. So out of 7 episodes, he's not in of his show, Boba Fett. He's not in one of his episodes. So in one of his episodes in his own show, he's not even in it. That's 1/7, okay? I can't do the math right now, but it's between 12 and 15% where he is not even in the show. So, I mean, I can be positive. I could say, oh man, Boba Fett is so kick butt. He doesn't even need to be in his own show. I could say that. That's positive, right? But the reaction has been really rather strange. It's been kind of meta, where people are starting to say, well, I don't actually need to see Boba Fett anymore. Just give me Mando. And a lot of people, because of that, have said, well, why was this introduced? We love the show. Don't get us wrong. We want to see Mando in season 3. We want to see Grogu and stuff like that. And they're excited to see The Mandalorian season 3, but they're really also quite confused. It's like, why did they put it in this show? I'm kind of confused. Why do I want to see Mando now, and I don't even care about the Book of Boba Fett? And so that was kind of a mixed bag of reactions I've been seeing. And even articles like journalism, they're taking on what the fans are talking about. And I think just in general, something is happening. I will say this is speculation, but I wonder if this is also intentional. And that is, I wonder if Favreau and everyone under him, everyone on his team, are actively replacing legacy characters with their own original characters. Now, that on its own, is that a bad thing? Not really. It's legal. They can make any creative decision they want with that. But the question is why? Like, morally speaking, is it the right thing to do? Is Mando, who every Star Wars fan who's against the sequels, loving Mando, they're fine. Like, the majority of these fans are saying, is it bad that I love this episode as I think it's the greatest, it's my favorite, and Boba Fett's not even, I'm not interested in Boba Fett. That's actually been a common reaction to episode 5. And it made me wonder, like, fans who don't like the sequels are slowly accepting that they don't need the legacy characters. They're slowly accepting that they didn't need Boba Fett to begin with. At least not in the capacity of 7 episodes. And I wonder if they're fine with Mando's replacement of Boba Fett. Now, why I bring this up is that there's not really a pattern, because it's only happened once. But Rey Skywalker had effectively demoted Luke Skywalker. People will contend with me on that, say, no, Luke Skywalker's entrance in the end of season 2 was amazing. It was amazing. Well, yeah, but going through canon, through Disney canon, or however you put it now these days, going through canon, the beloved Luke Skywalker that you saw on The Mandalorian is going to be the Skywalker of Last Jedi. And he will be replaced. Rey Skywalker demotes him. We see that. That is part of canon. That is part. If you accept The Mandalorian as canon, you've accepted what's going to happen in the future with Luke Skywalker. He's not replaced in the timeline, between Return of the Jedi and The Last Jedi. But effectively, Rey Skywalker, at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, has become the new Skywalker, establishing the Jedi Order. So Rey has demoted Luke in the sequel trilogy. A Disney original character has demoted an old original character, a legacy character. And now Mando, a Disney original character, has demoted a legacy character, an original character. And I wonder if this is going to happen in the future. I wonder if like they'll do a television show on Princess Leia when she's young. Maybe this is before her planet is blown up, and this is before she meets Luke and Han and Chewie. And maybe in that series, she would be replaced by an original Disney character. Maybe Yoda in the High Republic is going to be effectively replaced. Now, maybe he's not replaced because, we see him in the prequels and we see him in the original trilogy. Or maybe in the future, maybe his Force Ghost is replaced by an original Disney character. This is all speculation. I'm just saying my thoughts because it's my channel. I'm not saying this is true or that they're meaning to do it. But why do you come on? When it comes to writing, why in the world do you need a Boba Fett TV series when you effectively had your own Boba Fett? And fans are accepting him as the better Boba Fett. That's the crazy thing. And I'm looking at from the outside and like, this is so fascinating. I'm actually quite fascinated. And maybe I sound like an academic and all of that, but I want to talk about the meta of what's happening in fandom and also the writing of Disney. That's the question. Is Disney intentionally making Boba Fett lose his momentum or lose his steam? This is not the passing of the mantle. Maybe one could argue me and say, well, with Luke Skywalker and Rey Skywalker, that was at least the passing on the mantle. I'm like, okay, in terms of story, okay. But that's not the case with Book of Boba Fett and Mando. I think there's something happening where the creatives involved in Disney, they're like, okay, guys, let's take a legacy character and let's we already got this guy now with Mando. He's kind of cooler than Boba Fett, but we have to have Boba Fett because that's what the fans want. And then, let's try to make I'm totally speculated. I don't know if this is the brain room. It's like, well, let's make him uninteresting so they'll actually not like Boba Fett as much as they like Mando. And maybe that's not true. Maybe that's not how they're thinking, but that's how it's working out. People have said, I don't need to see Boba Fett for the last 2 episodes. Not everyone, but a lot of people. They're like, Mando has to be in the last 2 episodes because I'm really not interested in seeing Boba Fett and Fennec Shand. I'm not saying that's everyone, but I saw a handful of people. Like, I saw a lot of comments that were saying that they were expressing those thoughts. So that's my meta narrative. Is Disney intentionally or unintentionally replacing old original trilogy legacy characters with Disney characters? You know what, Sir Stone? Like, I commend you for that. Like, to be honest, I should stop talking about Star Wars. And I had decided to stop talking about Star Wars in the way of writing because I don't watch the shows anymore. I do think it's important to talk at least for a little bit longer until I'm probably going to talk about other stuff like games, soundtracks, music themes of other things, music history, whatever the case is. I'll talk more about music outside the popular culture besides games. I'll talk about it a little further. I do plan on way down the road, like when the viewership stops, when people stop recording viewership, I do want to see how. Oh, actually, I don't. I'm going to wait until the playlist comes out or the soundtrack comes out for the Book of Boba Fett. I'd like to talk about it because it's a different composer. It's a guy by the name of Joseph Shirley. And I'd like to see if he's picked up Goransson's cues or if he's gone back to the other stuff. I would be very interested in talking about that. But actually, outside that, I'm pretty much done with the Star Wars news myself. I had been listening to a lot of channels on Star Wars, and they keep coming back into my feed, even though I've kind of, for a lot of them, I've clicked not interested and stuff like that. So you have been, I commend you for being out of the Star Wars loop. Because I thought you had said that you just didn't like the turn of events, which your actions speak louder than my actions. But I'm talking about culturally in the way of music. I have said what I wanted to say with the writing. Can I say one more thing though about nah, I think I'm done with saying with writing. I just had a thought pop in my head. I was thinking sometimes I think random things during the week, like in the morning or something when I'm getting ready to work on my music. And I had seen videos who supported the idea of the character like Ahsoka Tano being a Mary Sue. Professor and I think that she is a Mary Sue with the right way of writing. But I will say, I'll be fair to Ahsoka Tano. I will say, and this was one of my random thoughts this week, I will say that Ahsoka Tano is not a Mary Sue when other writers are involved, when 2 or more writers are involved with her character. She is a complete Mary Sue when Dave Filoni writes her. Dave Filoni's best interest in making his baby interesting is to pass the baton to capable writers for her show. I am morbidly curious how he is going to write that show. I'm not watching that show, but I will watch the reaction because that man cannot write. And if he wants Ahsoka interesting, if he wants her timeless, well, he's going to try to force his hand making her timeless anyway. He needs to step down as far as the writing. He can have all the creative ideas and the big ideas for her character because he's already done that. He's not a good writer. He's not a good writer. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. It's like, oh, and I saw it with the I think it was this little podcast. I hope they grow. I'm not really interested in supporting them because they have some they support things that I don't support. They're critical of Disney, but they're still supporting by watching all the shows. But I still hope their podcast takes off because they're very insightful young men. They sound like they're in their 20s. They're very well spoken. They're very insightful. YouTube just recommended a video of theirs, so I was like, oh, that's cool. It was because I've been listening to the Book of Boba Fett theme. But in any case, I did see from their podcast that had made a return, and they were kind of excited, like, oh, baby Yoda's going to fit in that little dome, that little dome compartment. I was like, of course he is, because that's what fans are going to be salivating over. They salivate over Baby Yoda. The Baby Yoda syndrome. I said to the prof, like, months back, Baby Yoda of this decade was cat videos of the 2010s. Professor Geek is not talking to me. He's talking about Lone Ranger, but I'm going to stay out of that because I don't know anything about Lone Ranger, and I'm not. Let's see. Sir Stone says, if the best part of the Boba Fett show doesn't even have Boba in it, then the show as a whole must be really, really rough. That's the complaints I've heard. Final Fantasy fan says, why have Ben Solo and Kylo Ren, and why have Ben Solo or Kylo Ren instead of Jason Solo Darth? Oh, there you go. So another instance of, well, at least EU characters being replaced. By Disney characters. Why have Rey instead of Jaina Solo? Seriously, Young Jedi Knights and Legacy of the Force books are interesting and sound really cool. I would be interested. I'm not going to explore too much of the EU like Professor Geek will, but I would like to read the books involving Luke's relationship and marriage with Mara Jade and also um, uh, the solo children and all that. I'd be interested in how they were treated and stuff. That is true. Well, that's the thing is, Dr. Y, it's like, I just would say, you say a fandom only dies when people stop talking about it. I want to bring one more thing to the table. Even though I talk about it and give Disney its attention, people say, "Oh, well, you should just ignore it if you don't like what's going on." I want to bring to the table something I had heard recently, just actually the last video of RJ from the Fourth Age. He talked about the importance of not just ignoring what's happening, and producing good stuff, which I'm doing. I'm producing original music and I'm writing a space opera myself. So I'm doing my part in producing other stuff and loving, just enjoying other shows. Like, oh, Prof and I just finished season 3 of Agents of Shield, and that was a wallop, man. That was an emotional wallop for me. It was good. It was I cried. I felt emotional. It was so good. No spoilers for season 4, but we finished season 3, and it was so good. It was so well done. But anyway, what was I saying? RJ from the Fourth Age, he was talking about, you really want to continue talking about the problems, the cultural problems of what's happening. So the idea, if it is intentional for Disney to replace old legacy characters with their own original characters, not make original characters for the sake of making characters, but to replace other characters, well, that's a cultural problem. That's a, I could use a strong word. That's a wicked thing to do. That's a malicious thing to do. Because, like, let's say your piece of art gets picked up and it's not protected. And people, like, let's say, 20, 30 years after your death, and your beloved story is just like, like so many people love it. They're like, oh, we love this character, we love this hero, we love this love interest, we love this villain, and we love this story. And then some trust or some entity takes it, maybe the family sells it or whatever, sells it as a trust, or puts this entity into the trust or whatever, however legal you do that, whatever the legality of that is. And they say, ooh, we got an audience, we got a big substantial audience, and you know what, rather than add on to characters and add on to new stories, why don't we just replace these characters? I mean, that's a wicked thing to do. That's a wicked thing to do. I'm not saying you shouldn't have something like The Mandalorian, but why would you have Boba Fett then? Because you kind of filled that role. And the fact that you put in 7 episodes of Boba Fett that are by fans' accounts, not mine, they are saying, the majority of fans are saying, this is rather uninteresting. I enjoy it, but it's kind of uninteresting. There are problems with it. It's like, well, why didn't you just, okay, why don't you make Mando a very personable character, like a Luke Skywalker bounty hunter, okay? Why don't you make him personable and then leave Boba Fett as mysterious, like the dark figure, the dark, tall, handsome stranger, even though his helmet's not that handsome. It's kind of funny. There are pictures of Boba Fett and Mando side by side, and Mando's helmet is all clean and shiny and pristine, and Boba Fett's all tattered and tainted. It's like, well, he's been in the war, he's been fighting, he's been on bounty hunter runs. I'm like, and Mando hasn't. And it looks like Mando looks like this shiny new car. Like, oh, I love you, my old beater car, but you gotta go. You're gonna go to the. We're gonna get you, taken to the dump. We're gonna salvage your parts, try to sell your salvaged parts and stuff like that. It's kind of, I know that's kind of harsh, but it's kind of what it's looking like. And I think I don't know if that's intentional, so I'm not going to call it wicked. But if it was ever found out that was the creative decision, we wanted to use our own original character to replace a legacy character, someone else's character, well, that's wicked. That's malicious. And RJ from the Fourth Age is saying you need to call that out, and we need to keep the culture constantly reminded of this. That, yeah, you could say, you could call, he even went so far to say it's not enough to say it's a bad story even if it is a bad story. It's more to say, hey, if you see something nefarious going on, you need to call it out and you need to bring it to the public attention that this is a nefarious thing to do. We do that with the political space in the public square, we call out the evil in politics and social things all the time. And the entertainment is part of society. It's part of our culture. We absorb what they give us, what they feed us, and that's for the better, and that's for the worst. So again, I'll be fair and say, hey, maybe this is not their intention. Maybe it was an honest mistake, saying, man, this fell flat. We didn't get the reception we wanted, but maybe it's because we didn't do this right. So if it was the writers and the creators and people like Favreau saying, man, we didn't get what we wanted with Boba Fett, and that was our mistake. What did we do wrong? If that was more of a self-assessment and artistic assessment and evaluation, sure, I would cut them some slack. But if it was ever found out that that was intentional, we should call it out. We should call the evil on that. So I would say, be gone, Russian bot. I would say that the fandom will continue for as long as Star Wars will continue. And whether the fandom is for the better or worse of Star Wars, time will tell. I kind of think it's gonna peter out over. I really don't think Star Wars is gonna last for another. I would cap it off at 2 generations from now, unless people started going back to the old trilogy. But people don't pick up the EU like they did in the 90s and stuff. And if they don't go to the original trilogy and the hero's journey, like if there's a remake of the original trilogy and Luke's a completely different character and Leia's a completely different character, if they go back to that remake of the original trilogy, I can't imagine Star Wars lasting 1 or 2 generations longer. I almost feel like I will still be alive. I'm going to be like in my 80s or in my 90s, and no one's going to talk about Star Wars. Like I kind of see that happening. But that would change if artistic quality got better. If it doesn't, like, again, if they said, Book of Boba Fett didn't work, what did we do wrong? And then they learn from their mistake, and by mistake, I mean, like, what did we do that caused this fan reaction that's not so favorable? If they learn from that, then that's awesome. But if it's like, no, we're just going to cherry pick what you guys like from the EU, and then we're going to dress it up in Disney original characters, well, it's their legal right to. But just because it's their legal right, is it right? Is it morally right? And the answer is no. Artistically, morally speaking, it's not right. I love talking about this. If you guys if you can't tell. Okay, Big Al is correcting me. Din Djarin got new armor at the beginning of the series. Is it the beginning of the 2nd season? Fetz is older, but he has refurbished it. Yeah. I was kind of, it was more tongue-in-cheek, like how he looks shiny and Boba Fett looks tattered. And I feel like there's a little bit of symbolism there. All right, Dr. Y and Professor Geek are going at it with the Lone Ranger. But anyway, why don't you guys talk to me? It's my stream. I went up to comments. Oh, but I do want to give a shout out to Sage's Moss. Welcome. Glad to have you. His name is Grogu. Go. Like I feel like I kind of tease like with the prof. Like I feel like Grogu is like your dog voice. We all have dog voices. You're so cute. You're so cute. It's like, that's what I feel like Grogu's name is. Dr. Weiss is salivating over Baby Yoda. Ugh, I did not need that image. I mean, I don't mean literally salivating. I need, you know how people like, oh, he's so dreamy, you know? It's like, but does Fett like paint? No, I don't know. But I want your honest opinion, Al. What do you think about those Vesper speeders? That I know was like a universal complaint. Oh, thanks, Prof. You were talking to me. I honestly think there's no logic or limit to what the ravioli fans will turn a blind eye to or trade from the original trilogy just for another Disney equal series hashtag. So, guys, Prof and I, we actually talked about it, like, I think right before the stream. We're calling it the ravioli, the ravioli verse, because I've been hearing. Well, originally it was like last year it was Filoni verse, but now people are really putting their money on Favreau and what he's capable of. So I've been seeing in the comments Favreau / Filoni, and then I've been also seeing like people rearrange the letters of their names and stuff like that, and it's like this all looks like ravioli. Their names together look like ravioli, so I'm going to call it the ravioli verse, or Filoni verse, bologna verse, fried bologna verse, because I think the whole thing is fried. We'll call it the fried bologna verse. But I shouldn't say that because fried bologna I hear is delicious. So we'll call it ravioli verse. See, you have a little sadistic humor, Al. Now, the thing is, like, when I talk about all of this, like, people complaining and stuff, am I mad at Filoni? Am I mad at Favreau? Am I mad at the creative decisions happening? No. Like, I'm really cool with all of it. It's fun to talk about. Fried bologna is delicious. Actually, my side story, when I was living in Arkansas for 3 years, I found my love of barbecue when I actually moved to the South. So barbecue in Arkansas was pretty good. A lot of great prize-winning sauce. And then I remember Mom visiting Arkansas, and she's like, "Oh, barbecue! I have to get a fried bologna sandwich," because she grew up in the South, so she was aware of that. I was like, and I never tried it, and I can't remember. Like, I kind of regret not trying it, but every time I would go out for barbecue, I would get the same stuff I'd like. I like sausage links with prize-winning barbecue sauce, greens. I've got to have my greens. And what else do I like? I like things like fried okra, fried green tomatoes. But I actually, if the greens are good, I can have 2 servings of greens. So like pulled pork and prize-winning barbecue sauce, and then like 2 servings of greens, and I will be happy. So I never really want fried bologna, like unless that's all they served or something. But I haven't tried it myself. Elijah Brown is here. Welcome. Oh, it's 11:18. We're just finishing up, Elijah, but thank you for coming. Appreciate you. It's already to this point. Let me read this correctly. It's already to this point in our culture and fiction that in order for all of it to be timeless, it has to die. Well, I was talking about this to the prof. I promise we'll wrap. I said 11 o'clock and it's 11:19 now. I was talking about this with the prof. We take daily walks and we kind of like, talk and ruminate as we walk, and we walk about 3 miles a day if it's a good day. It's been cold, 3 to 4 miles a day. So we talk about a lot of different things going on in culture, what we like, what we're seeing. We talk about politics, but I don't talk about politics on this stream. And I was talking about the subject of timelessness, and I really do believe there's nothing wrong with wanting new things. There's nothing wrong with needing new things. But when you actually are dissatisfied, or you think something is meh, when you think a new show is just average or even below average, but you feel like you have to watch it because it's new, that's where I would say and encourage you to enjoy the old stuff. I like the older stuff. I don't care how old Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is, it's not that old, but this is my first time watching it. And I would take a show like that any day, no matter how many years ago it was made. I would take a show like that, then get something new, and then be dissatisfied. I don't pick on Al because he loves this stuff and he enjoys this stuff. I mean, I pick on him a little bit, but he loves this stuff and he enjoys enjoyment. He that's his thing. He loves enjoying things. So for that, he finds enjoyment in new things, and he's trying new things out, new films, new television shows, and that's great. What really kind of saddens me a little bit is people who actually are dissatisfied with new content but keep watching it. Now, there are people out there who make tons of money complaining about new stuff. And honestly, I will probably never see the salaries of some of these people, unless my music takes off or whatever, or I perform a lot. But so I can't be really in that position where I'm like, well, you shouldn't complain about this just because you make a lot of money on it. I don't know what it's like to make that kind of money. Some of these guys have families to support, and maybe they enjoy complaining about stuff. That's the thing. Maybe they take pleasure in the actual complaining of something. But people who actually do find in their heart dissatisfaction, I would say don't spend time in that. If you I'm not condoning gossip, but people, if they complain, maybe they like gossiping too, and that's bad. I wouldn't. I like to talk about things that are happening in our culture and our art, even if it looks like I'm complaining, but I'm not. I'm actually speculating, and I have fun. I have a lot of fun observing and speculating. It's a nice pastime. So what you're seeing there, Final Fantasy fan, is oh, that was that was a really wide turn. I was getting to this point. For all of it to be timeless, it has to die. I think people in our culture, from high levels of enjoyment to low levels of just dissatisfaction, people want new stuff. Now, there's nothing wrong with having new stuff, but if it actually plagues you spiritually, go back to the old stuff. There's a treasure trove of all sorts of things, all sorts of old entertainment you can get into that you can take pleasure in, and you don't have to be part of a community. You don't have to. But like, I have to get involved in all my favorite YouTubers and write down the comments. I'm like, well, maybe that's just not worth it in the end. And this goes to this idea of timelessness, because I think people don't appreciate things that are timeless, because I will have no problem watching the original trilogy time and time again. And for the flaws in execution and writing of the prequels, I won't have any problem watching those over and over again. I will never have a problem watching The Lord of the Rings over and over and over again. I saw The Hobbit, the first two films twice. No, I'm sorry, first two films once. I'd never bothered with the third movie. I didn't need to watch it. The Hobbit films just didn't sit well with me at all. And I never went back. But I liked Peter Jackson's work of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I have no problem for the rest of my life watching it time and time again, because there's something special about that trilogy. There's something special about the original trilogy. Even if the creators made different decisions from the author, from Tolkien, it's still a good trilogy. Even if there are some weird things and little mishaps, little writing mishaps of the original trilogy, it's still a classic. And I think people just don't appreciate what's timeless because they're just out for the next thing. So with people like Al, who just thoroughly enjoy new stuff, that's one thing. But when people actually are watching it with a sense of dissatisfaction, that's when it's okay to turn it off. It's okay to move on. Okay. Oh, great, Dr. Y. I gotta admit, I geeked out on seeing the Naboo fighter in the same scene as an X-wing. Well, they know how to play their cards, guys. I really should wrap it up. But I have a lot of people watching. Huh. Well, thanks, guys, for watching. Let's see. As hard as it does sound, you must be willing to let go in order to move on. Yes, exactly. You just said what I said. That's awesome. I knew I was going to cause that reaction, Big Al. I was talking about barbecue and prize-winning barbecue sauce and greens and stuff. I'm like, I wonder if I'm like making Al miserable right now. I think the prof and I decided for Valentine's Day. There's a barbecue joint that we still haven't been, and I'm up for some barbecue for Valentine's Day. All right, we'll wrap up these comments, and then I'll talk about some ideas for my channel and some planning stuff, and then we'll wrap it up. Stone says, I just hope if Star Wars burns out, my friends will finally have time to read The Tane. Is that anime? I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. Yeah, I said that right. Sometimes I will question how I say things on stream. You're making me and Al hungry. To quote Yoda in episode 3, train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Yoda can teach the fandom a lot today. And Elijah Brown, I also feel like many people don't appreciate timeless things. I feel like a lot of people just want to turn to things, cultural things, into a meme. Well said. Well said. Or Funko Pop to be trendy. That's well said. Very, very astute observation there. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. Let me just wrap it up here. So real quick, we have a little bit of a schedule change the prof has regarding having his daughter for the week. So there might be a change in his book study on the Professor Geek channel for Allegiance. It might be another day. We were planning it for Tuesday night, or he was planning on. I'm not part of the book study, but he may have that Tuesday. So no, sorry, another day of the week. That's not Tuesday this week. So he'll probably fill you in, maybe whether in chat or just look out for a notification on his channel when that is. But he's going back to Allegiance for a few chapters, and I will be providing more commentary on the Final Fantasy IV in the next week or so. I'm actually going to have a nice structure and visuals and analysis and all that. I kind of want to work with a new format with my sound analysis or soundtrack analysis. So score. So I'm actually I did a nice categorizing of the Final Fantasy IV soundtracks. And then I have separate scores, and I actually changed the total points. And actually, I changed the total points from 250 to 300, and it still rounded out to 92%. So spoiler, 92% for that. But I'll show you the different tracks and my analysis on that. Oh, great. I started drama. I'm sorry. Well, maybe not. I actually don't know what I'll do for my sound experimentation. It will probably be Logic Pro. I need to actually refer to Eli Fieldsteel's videos for SuperCollider because I'm kind of in a stuck place with SuperCollider. So I need to find something new to talk to you guys about because I'm still kind of learning the curve myself. So likely original music, maybe Uncharted, as per requested by who was it? Was it Espinosa? Miguel, I think it was him, maybe someone else. But anyway, just look for that and maybe a couple other video projects in the next 2 weeks or so. Couple announcements for next week. I will do a normal stream Monday night, just normal time. Topic for next week will be John Williams because it's the day before. It's going to be the night before his his 90th birthday. And maybe I'll stay up until midnight, and so I can wish him happy birthday. And then I'm hoping to be on soundtracks with Birdman. Gotta message him because I do have an early evening commitment. I hope he's probably asleep now. I gotta message him. So hopefully I'll be on his stream Tuesday night the 8th, where we are talking about John Williams. But I realized I had a new commitment starting that night, so we'll see how that is. Ow. Whoops. I just started drama. Sorry, guys. Me and my big mouth. All right, anyway. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Always be on the lookout for some more sound experimentation and some commentary on art and music. And until I see you next, keep producing and preserving and promoting the art you love, and I'll catch you later. Thanks again.